November 6th, 2024. A Westlake City Schools teacher notices something wrong in the parking lot on Detroit Road. His laptop is missing from his unlocked car, along with other personal belongings. But this isn't just any theft. Security cameras reveal the truth. His ex-girlfriend, Hannah Freeman, has been showing up at his workplace. Not once, not twice, but at least 33 times in just 30 days. And wherever you're watching this from tonight, imagine discovering that someone you once trusted has been watching your every move, taking your things, and believing they're completely untouchable. But this case goes deeper than obsession. Hannah Freeman wasn't just any elementary school teacher. She was the daughter of North Ridgeville Police Chief Michael Freeman. This story began long before that November night, and it would end with a courtroom breakdown that shocked Ohio. The victim spent months living in fear, never knowing when she would appear next, never understanding why someone he once cared about had become his worst nightmare. This is Accused, where we dig into the cases that make you question everything you thought you knew about the people around you. If cases like this keep you up at night like they do me, hit that subscribe button. Today we're looking at a case that shook Ohio, not just because of what happened, but because of who was behind it. The body cam footage, the court records, the security camera evidence, all of it points to one disturbing truth. This is the story of how a police chief's daughter thought her family connections made her above the law, and how a simple breakup turned into a criminal campaign that would destroy her career and land her in jail. This case proves that obsession doesn't discriminate, and neither does justice. Hannah Freeman was 27 years old in 2024, working as a fourth-grade teacher at Ranger High-Tech Academy in North Ridgeville City Schools. On paper, she looked like the perfect educator, dedicated to her students, part of a respected law enforcement family. Her colleagues knew her as someone who cared about education, who showed up every day ready to teach 9- and 10-year-olds. Her father, Michael Freeman, served as North Ridgeville's police chief, giving Hannah a front-row seat to how the law worked in their community. The Freeman name carried weight in North Ridgeville. It meant something to be the police chief's daughter. It opened doors, earned respect, created expectations. But what her colleagues didn't know was that Hannah was dealing with a breakup that she couldn't accept. Her ex-boyfriend, also a teacher, working in the Westlake City Schools system, had moved on with his life. Hannah had not. The relationship ended, but in Hannah's mind, the story wasn't over. She still had access to him, still knew where he worked, still believed that persistence would change his mind. By fall of 2024, that persistence had turned into something much darker. Hannah's professional life was built on helping children learn and grow, but her personal life was becoming consumed by an unhealthy fixation on someone who no longer wanted to be part of her world. The security cameras at Westlake City Schools tell the whole story, and it's a story that gets more disturbing with each frame. Day after day, the same silver car pulling into the parking lot, the same woman getting out, walking toward the building, trying to catch glimpses of her ex-boyfriend. Hannah Freeman made this trip 33 times in just 1 month. That's more than once a day, every single day, showing up at someone else's workplace, without permission, without invitation, without any legitimate reason to be there. Think about that for a moment. Imagine trying to do your job, trying to focus on teaching middle school students, while knowing that your ex-girlfriend is outside in the parking lot, watching and waiting. The victim, whose name hasn't been released to protect his privacy, documented everything because he knew something was seriously wrong. He kept track of when she showed up, took note of her behavior, watched as her visits became more frequent and more bold. He started changing his routines, varying his schedule, looking over his shoulder every time he walked to his car. But like many stalking victims, he hesitated to call police. Hannah wasn't just anyone. She was connected. Her father ran the police department in the next town over. Would anyone believe him? Would anyone take action against the police chief's daughter? The psychological impact was taking its toll. Going to work became stressful. Simple tasks like walking to the parking lot became exercises in anxiety. Hannah's presence turned his workplace into a source of fear instead of fulfillment. The stalking was just the beginning, and what happened next shows how obsession can escalate from watching to taking. Hannah's behavior moved from passive observation to active violation. On November 6, 2024, she crossed the line from harassment to theft in a way that would change everything. Her ex-boyfriend had parked his car in the lot on Detroit Road in Westlake, the same lot where Hannah had been showing up for weeks. This time, she didn't just watch from a distance. She approached his unlocked vehicle and took his laptop computer along with other personal belongings. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was calculated, premeditated, deliberate. Hannah knew his routine, knew where he parked, knew when he wouldn't be around. She had been studying his movements for a month like a predator studies prey. The theft gave her access to more than just his property. A laptop contains emails, photos, personal documents, passwords, browsing history, work files, private conversations. For someone already obsessed with monitoring their ex-partner, it was the perfect tool for further invasion of privacy. She could read his messages, see who he was talking to, learn about his personal life in ways that no ex-partner should ever have access to. The violation was complete. She had taken his sense of safety, his privacy, and now his personal property. Question for you. If someone with police connections was stalking you, would you report it immediately, document everything first, or try to handle it privately? The reality is that most stalking victims face this exact dilemma. They wonder if they'll be believed, if the system will protect them, if reporting will make things better or worse. Keep that answer in mind as we see what happened next, because this victim's decision would determine whether Hannah Freeman finally faced consequences or continued her campaign of harassment. The victim finally reached his breaking point on November 6, 2024, the same day Hannah stole from his car, and made the call that would change everything. He picked up the phone and dialed Westlake Police, knowing that this conversation would either bring him relief or make his situation worse. According to Westlake Police Captain Gerald Vogel, the victim reported that he had observed Hannah Freeman take a laptop and other belongings from his unlocked vehicle. But that wasn't all he told them. He also reported the pattern of harassment, the 33 workplace visits captured on security cameras, the months of unwanted contact that had been building toward this moment. He explained how his daily life had been disrupted, how he couldn't go to work without wondering if she would be there, how the simple act of parking his car had become a source of anxiety. The officer taking the report understood the seriousness of the situation immediately. This wasn't just about a stolen laptop. This was about a systematic campaign of harassment that had escalated to theft. Westlake Police took the report seriously, despite Hannah's family connections, and that decision would prove crucial in bringing her to justice. Detective work began immediately, and the evidence was overwhelming. Westlake Police reviewed the security footage from the school, and what they found was disturbing. Hour after hour of footage showing Hannah Freeman arriving at the school, parking in the lot, walking around the building, clearly looking for her ex-boyfriend. The pattern was undeniable. The dates matched the victim's documentation perfectly. They had video evidence of stalking behavior that spanned an entire month. They also had physical evidence from the theft. The laptop had been taken from the parking lot, and they knew exactly who had taken it. Within 24 hours of receiving the report, they had enough evidence to make an arrest. The case was solid, the charges were serious, and Hannah Freeman's sense of protection was about to disappear completely. On November 7th, 2024, just one day after the theft, Hannah Freeman was taken into custody by Westlake Police and charged with theft and menacing by stalking. For the first time in her life, being the police chief's daughter couldn't save her from the consequences of her actions. The arrest sent shockwaves through both North Ridgeville and Westlake school communities, and the news spread quickly through local law enforcement circles. A teacher arrested for stalking another teacher, the daughter of a police chief charged with criminal behavior. Hannah was booked into jail, processed like any other suspect, and for the first time, she couldn't rely on her father's position to make the problem go away. The charges she faced were serious and carried real consequences. Menacing by stalking in Ohio is a first-degree misdemeanor that can carry up to 180 days in jail and a $1,000 fine. The theft charges added even more potential jail time. Her teaching career was immediately in jeopardy. School districts don't keep employees who are arrested for stalking and theft. Her reputation in the community was destroyed. The Freeman family name, once associated with law and order, was now connected to criminal behavior. But prosecutors weren't done building their case against Hannah, and what they uncovered next would make the charges even more serious. As investigators dug deeper into Hannah's behavior, examining the evidence from her phone, her computer, and the stolen laptop, more charges followed. The initial arrest was just the beginning of Hannah's legal troubles. In addition to the theft and stalking charges from November, Hannah was indicted on multiple felony charges, including burglary and identity fraud. These weren't minor additions to her case. These were serious felony charges that could result in years in prison. The laptop theft wasn't just about taking property, it was about accessing private information without permission. Identity fraud charges suggested that Hannah had used the stolen information for additional criminal purposes, possibly accessing accounts, impersonating her victim, or using his personal data in ways that violated multiple laws. The case was growing more serious by the day, and Hannah's legal team knew they were facing an uphill battle. The evidence was overwhelming. Security cameras, witness testimony, stolen property found in Hannah's possession, digital evidence from her devices. There was no denying what had happened, no way to claim innocence, no defense strategy that could overcome the mountain of evidence prosecutors had built. Months passed as the legal process moved forward, and Hannah Freeman found herself facing the possibility of significant prison time. The felony charges were the real problem. Misdemeanor stalking and theft were one thing, but felony burglary and identity fraud could result in years behind bars. Her defense attorneys knew they needed to negotiate a deal, and prosecutors were willing to listen. The victim was consulted throughout the process, and his input was crucial in determining how the case would be resolved. He wanted Hannah to face consequences for what she had done, but he also wanted to move on with his life. After months of negotiations, in June 2025, facing multiple felony charges and the possibility of significant prison time, Hannah Freeman made a deal with prosecutors that would change everything. She pleaded guilty to 3 reduced misdemeanor charges: disorderly conduct, possessing criminal tools, and obstruction. The plea deal meant she would avoid felony convictions and the possibility of years in prison, but she would still face jail time and other serious consequences. The disorderly conduct charge covered her stalking behavior, repeatedly showing up at her ex-boyfriend's workplace without permission. The possessing criminal tools charge related to her use of stolen property and information. The obstruction charge covered her attempts to interfere with the investigation. Prosecutors consulted with the victim before agreeing to the deal, and he supported the resolution. He felt that the plea deal would bring closure to the case, while still holding Hannah accountable for her actions. Hannah was scheduled for sentencing in July 2025, and everyone expected a routine hearing where she would receive probation, community service, maybe some counseling. Nobody expected what actually happened in Judge David Mattia's courtroom, and the dramatic scene that followed would become viral video across social media platforms. July 17, 2025, Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. Hannah Freeman walked into Judge David Mattia's courtroom expecting leniency, and her entire demeanor suggested she believed this was just a formality before returning to her normal life. She had made a plea deal, agreed to reduce charges, avoided felony convictions, and likely believed that her clean record and professional background would earn her a suspended sentence with probation. She was dressed professionally, composed. sitting quietly next to her attorney as the judge reviewed the case details. Her family members were in the courtroom, probably expecting her to walk out that day with minimal consequences. She was wrong about everything. Judge Mattia had reviewed the evidence, read the police reports, understood the impact on the victim, and decided that Hannah Freeman needed to face real consequences for her actions. When he announced the sentence, everything changed. Hannah Freeman was sentenced to 7 days in jail, 90 days of house arrest with GPS monitoring, 18 months of probation, and mandatory mental health counseling. The moment the word jail left the judge's mouth, Hannah's composed demeanor shattered completely. The dramatic courtroom video that followed would go viral across social media and become one of the most watched court meltdowns in recent memory. Hannah Freeman, the elementary school teacher who had stalked her ex-boyfriend for months, broke down sobbing in court in a display that was both shocking and pathetic. Her emotional outburst was so intense that it disrupted the entire proceeding. She cried loudly, dramatically, like a child being told they couldn't have a toy. The woman who had believed she was above consequences was finally facing the reality that actions have results, regardless of who your father is. Her attorney tried to calm her down, court officials watched in amazement, and her family members sat in embarrassed silence as Hannah's mask of respectability fell away completely. This wasn't grief or remorse. This was shock that she was actually being held accountable. The video spread rapidly on social media, with thousands of people sharing and commenting on the dramatic breakdown of the police chief's daughter who thought she was untouchable. The courtroom drama didn't end with Hannah's tears, and what happened next showed just how entitled she and her legal team believed she was. Her attorney immediately clashed with Judge Mattia over the sentence, arguing that jail time was excessive for the reduced charges, and that Hannah's background as an educator should be considered. The defense team seemed genuinely surprised that their client was facing actual jail time rather than a slap on the wrist. They argued that 7 days in jail was disproportionate, that house arrest and probation were sufficient, that Hannah had already suffered enough through the loss of her career and public humiliation. But Judge Mattia had heard enough, and his response made it clear that he understood exactly what this case was about. The evidence showed a pattern of harassment, theft, and invasion of privacy that couldn't be ignored or minimized. Hannah's behavior had terrorized another teacher, disrupted 2 school communities, violated someone's fundamental right to safety, and brought shame to her family's law enforcement legacy. The judge made it clear that Hannah's professional background and family connections were irrelevant. She had committed crimes and would face the consequences like any other defendant. The 7-day jail sentence would stand, and Hannah Freeman was no longer just a teacher who made bad choices. She was a convicted criminal heading to Cuyahoga County Jail. The aftermath of Hannah's sentencing revealed the full scope of consequences that extended far beyond her 7 days behind bars. Hannah Freeman was no longer employed by North Ridgeville City Schools. Her teaching career was over, destroyed by her own inability to accept that her relationship had ended. The Ohio Department of Education would review her teaching license, likely resulting in permanent revocation that would prevent her from ever working in education again. Her father, Police Chief Michael Freeman, faced questions about whether his daughter's behavior reflected on his department and his leadership. The North Ridgeville community, which had respected the Freeman family for years, now associated their name with stalking and criminal behavior. Hannah's house arrest meant she would spend the next 90 days confined to her home with GPS monitoring, a constant reminder of how her obsession had destroyed her freedom. Her 18 months of probation would require regular check-ins with a probation officer, and any violation could result in additional jail time. The mandatory mental health counseling was perhaps the most important part of her sentence, addressing the psychological issues that had led her to believe stalking was acceptable behavior. Today, months after her sentencing, the ripple effects of Hannah Freeman's crimes continue to impact everyone involved in this case. Her victim has returned to his normal life and continues working as a teacher, but the psychological impact of being stalked for months will likely stay with him forever. He had to change his routines, live in fear, and ultimately go through the stress of a criminal trial just because someone couldn't accept that their relationship was over. His courage to report the crime, despite Hannah's family connections, is what brought this case to light and ensured that justice was served. Hannah herself has completed her jail sentence, but continues serving house arrest and probation. Her teaching career is finished, her reputation destroyed, her family humiliated. The woman who once taught fourth graders about right and wrong learned the hardest way possible that actions have consequences. The case became a viral sensation, not just because of Hannah's courtroom breakdown, but because it proved that privilege has limits in the American justice system. Being the police chief's daughter didn't protect her from arrest. Having a respectable career didn't save her from jail time. The law applied to Hannah Freeman just like it applies to everyone else. For North Ridgeville Police Chief Michael Freeman, the case was both a personal and professional nightmare that challenged everything he stood for as a law enforcement officer. His daughter's criminal behavior reflected on his department, his family, and his leadership. The community that once respected the Freeman name now questioned whether the police chief could maintain law and order when his own daughter was breaking the law. Some community members wondered if Hannah had received special treatment in the past, if her family connections had helped her avoid consequences for previous behavior, if the apple had fallen far from the tree or was simply rotten from the start. Chief Freeman had to watch his daughter be arrested, charged, convicted, and sentenced while maintaining his professional duties and public image. The personal pain of seeing his child make such destructive choices was compounded by the professional embarrassment of having his family name associated with criminal behavior. The Hannah Freeman case teaches us something crucial about obsession, entitlement, and the dangerous combination of both. When someone can't accept rejection, when they believe their connections make them untouchable, when they think their professional status puts them above the law, dangerous behavior inevitably follows. Hannah's 33 visits to her ex-boyfriend's workplace weren't love, they were control. Her theft of his laptop wasn't desperation, it was violation. Her calm demeanor during the investigation wasn't confidence, it was delusion. Her courtroom breakdown wasn't remorse, it was shock that consequences had finally caught up with her. This case proves that stalking can happen in any community, between any types of people, and that no amount of privilege or professional respectability can excuse criminal behavior. Teachers, police officers, doctors, lawyers, professional status means nothing when you're breaking the law and terrorizing innocent people. Tomorrow we'll be back with another case that proves justice doesn't care about your last name or your father's badge. We'll look at how privilege and entitlement create dangerous blind spots that can destroy lives and families. If you want to see more stories where accountability meets arrogance, where consequences catch up with people who thought they were untouchable, subscribe to Accused. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a case that shows how the justice system works when it works correctly. And remember Hannah Freeman's victim, a teacher who just wanted to do his job in peace, but instead became the target of a month-long campaign of harassment and theft. His courage to finally report the crime, despite the potential complications of going up against a police chief's daughter, is what brought this case to light and proved that even the most connected families aren't above the law. Justice doesn't care about your connections, your career, or your father's badge. It only cares about the evidence, the law, and holding people accountable for their choices.